So in this follow-up installation to the previous video about the Cuauhtemoc collision with the Brooklyn Bridge, I wanted to discuss a couple recurring themes that keep coming up in the comments in both response to my video and other comments that I've been seeing online. So the two reoccurring themes in particular are the question of, well, how does a boat get stuck in gear in reverse? It's clear now, looking at some of the video footage, that the boat's clearly, and I did a short about this, so I'll you can click to the short in our videos, but the boat's clearly moving astern, creating a wash. It's evidently on AIS doing between 6.5 or 6.9 knots in reverse, going with the current. So this is sort of the information that has become more clear in the days now. It's been a couple of days since the incident, that the vessel left right around 8 p.m. and left with the current flooding, so upwards of 3 or so knots of current moving into the East River, and the vessel on AIS is seen doing, like I said, about 6.5 knots. So this is indicative that it's possible that with current and the wind reportedly gusting, that it could conceivably be doing that in reverse, but it's clear in the footage. You'll see that that the boat is creating a wash. It's clearly moving under power in reverse. So how does that happen? And I want to kick it over to this clip here that basically sums up better than I can, and you can see for yourself how these systems actually work. And in this particular clip that I found, they explain what happens in the event of a failure in that linkage mechanism in the fly-by-wire system. So I'm going to just let that piece of the video roll so that you guys can see for yourself how that system works, and what in fact are the protocols for when there is a failure with that system.
In case of power loss or an emergency, you can use the manual override function. Now the system is operating normally, but if you want to gain manual control, find the manual control button, rotate it clockwise until you feel the system is being released. You will feel a little click, and then you can move the manual lever up and down. So rotate the button clockwise, and now you can move the manual lever up and down, for instance to go to forward, neutral or aft gear, or throttle up or down. The electronic lever is now inoperable. To regain normal function, rotate the button counterclockwise all the way till it's fully released. Move the control lever up or down until you feel it latch, until you feel it click, and now normal operation is restored. There are several self-protection modes in the system. One protects the system against overload if it simply takes too much force to reach an end position. And the second version is where the end position is reached or almost reached, and there's an error close to that end position. For instance, if the stroke wasn't adjusted properly, there will be an error close to the end position, and the system will go into error mode in about 4 minutes. When there's an error during the stroke, it will go into error mode almost immediately. So this is normal operation, but here we are blocking the system, for instance with a bit of tool that fell into it. Try to go into reverse gear. There's now a problem halfway during the stroke, and in about 10 seconds the system goes into an overload protection mode, shown by the E. The control levers are now completely inoperable. The system won't respond to changes in the setting. So even if you go back to forward gear, the system won't respond. All 4 LEDs are blinking to indicate a malfunction. If the obstruction was found close to the end position, it would take longer. The levers would still respond, but typically the system goes to a low power setting. In this case, the system doesn't respond to the control lever at all anymore. Switch off power. Go into the manual mode to release the object. There will be a lot of stress in the system. Turn the knob until it's manually released, rotate the knob counterclockwise to go back to normal mode, move the control lever up or down until you feel it latch in, until you feel it click. Apply power again, and now the system is fully functioning again. So if you go to command mode, and the warm-up period, now the system will work as designed again.
The second question that keeps coming up is, why didn't they deploy the anchor immediately once they realized the issue? And this is, again, something that I want to support with some video. So some of you watching may be familiar with this, with the YouTube channel SV Panopay. And he's kind of regarded for many, many years now as the OG or the maven of anchor testing videos. So he cleverly hooks up, and you'll see, he cleverly hooks up a camera that is filming the anchors, various anchor designs underwater. But what's relevant to this video is that you'll see during his various tests that the anchors routinely, especially when he's doing a 180 change of direction test, right? So when the anchor sets and it's slowly loaded and slowly settles into the substrate, into the ground, then into the seabed, I should say, then you have a good hold, and you know, gradually loading the anchor with the weight of the scope of the chain on the bottom, you have a good set. What happens on anchor is when a tide or wind reverses you and you go right back over top of your anchor and you hit it and it pulls and flips or rolls out of the ground, out of the seabed, and you hit it with some speed, and you'll see in many instances the anchor is upside down or on its side, and it will drag for, you know, quite a distance before it will eventually right itself and get purchased again, if it does at all. So this is part of the explanation for why they wouldn't deploy the anchors. They had about 4 minutes from when they left the berth in reverse before they collided with the Brooklyn Bridge. So this isn't a huge amount of time for you to realize that there's a problem, assess your options, and then deploy an anchor, which in that case, in roughly 40, 50 feet of water or so in that area, you would need, with the boat going 6.5 or so knots in reverse, you're going to need ample scope. So you're talking about a 5 to 1. You're talking about in excess of 200 feet of chain on the bottom. To create a 5 to 1 scope, you probably realistically need a 7 to 1 scope. So you've already ran out of A, time, and B, distance. And that's not accounting for not only the distance of scope before you're already going to be hitting the bridge, but also the distance that that anchor is probably going to drag before, if and when it will actually dig into the seabed or something on the seabed. Which brings me to the next point, that you're talking about the East River in New York. So that's a no anchoring zone. You're going to have fiber optics and probably pipelines and power cables and all kinds of obstruction and stuff on the bottom. So there's many problems with deploying an anchor, not just the very real likelihood that the anchor wouldn't stop the boat in time anyway, but there's also other risks involved. So that's a little bit of an explanation. Watch the video. I'll let SV Panopay explain exactly why anchors, and keep in mind, bear in mind that this is to scale, right? So these are various modern or conventional anchor designs. So, you know, when you're talking about a ship the size of the Huatamak, you're talking about a more traditional ship's anchor, and there's limitations to that, the design of anchor, of course, not to mention that, you know, you're talking about much greater tonnage, much greater weight and forces involved in this case. So it's not going to be a direct one-to-one representation, right, approximation from seeing these anchor designs you're about to see versus what the Wakamuk will be or would have deployed. So keep that in mind, but this will at least help explain to those of you who aren't necessarily that familiar with anchoring or you know, the realities of deploying an anchor and getting a good set. This might help illustrate that for you, and you can see for yourself some of the challenges that realistically would come into play in trying to perform that maneuver.
Anchor test video number 144. Today we will look at the 20-pound range anchors down in the soft mud at Scow Bay. This will be a 180-degree reset test. I'll be using a 2-knot boat speed as I pass over the anchors, and I'll be giving them 5 resets each. This compares with my previous sandy mud seabed testing where the boat speed was held at 3.5 knots and a total of 10 resets each. So today's test will be a little less thorough, but perhaps a little more realistic at the more gentle 2-knot passover. Now, you may recall from that sandy mud testing that most of the anchors could cope with the test quite well and could reset whether they disengage or just rotate in the seabed. It was only a handful of anchors that had real trouble. It's completely different here with this soft mud test. Most of the anchors you'll see are going to have real trouble with this particular test, and it's only a small handful that do real well. All right, let's just get right to it, and we'll see how these anchors stack up. First up is the 17-pound Mantis M2. Its initial set is perfect. It's upright and it buries out of sight. Here's the first reset. The anchor rotated. It did not release from the seabed during the rotation, but when I just applied a small amount of thrust, the anchor just rolls right out, and it did not reset. Toward the end of the drag, we see the ear of the anchor shown just a little bit there at the top, so the anchor was on its side. Here's another reset attempt, more dragging. In fact, that was it. There was nothing else this anchor could do. We see it up on its side and mostly out of the substrate. Guess just mud fouled. This is a 24-pound Delta anchor. Landed on its side, but the act of setting it kind of rolled it upright and it just dove straight in perfectly. This first reset looks like a perfect backflip, but that's it. The anchor did not reset after a very long drag. Here's another reset attempt, much more slowly and gentle. No reset, long drag. Now this third reset, we can see the anchor was basically upside down. You can go back and rewind that, and it was mostly upside down, but the act of the reset tended to roll it upright, and lo and behold, it sets, but not a lot of holding power. It was, for some reason, maybe fouled, and just pulled right out. So there were no other resets, and at the bottom of the screen here, we see the anchor is upside down. That is the underside of the anchor. That's the tail end of the last attempt.
So again, thank you for tuning in on this video. I hope you found that enjoyable or informative. And again, if you're interested in learning more about sailing, operating a sailboat, perhaps you already own a boat and you want to take courses on maneuvering, increase your confidence in moving the boat in and out of the slip and these kind of things, then I invite you to check out our website. It's www.learntosailmexico.com. And we have all kinds of courses and endorsements for all kinds of subjects. If you want to do a deep dive into diesel maintenance, or do offshore sail training, or man overboard drills, or these kind of things, we can tailor packages to you, or you'll see online our various packages and endorsements that are designed to give you the skills and give you the confidence to get out there safely and enjoy the water. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.